First Things First is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wilds, Greg Jennings is with us. Gentlemen, hope you had a very nice weekend. Coming up on a very rainy Monday morning here in New York City. In an unprecedented move, Tom Brady finally did something corny, and it's got Nick thrilled to tell you what that is. Also, Jameis
like
is willing to, we are starting the show like that, Wilds. Jameis is willing to be a backup. Cam is not, and Joe Burrow's making some headlines. We'll wait on the Tom Brady story for you, Wilds. We will start with Burrow. Here we go. Joe Burrow is coming off a perfect 15-0 season where he won a national championship and the Heisman. But next week, he could be drafted first overall to a Bengals team coming off a 2-14 season, a team that hasn't had a winning season in 4 years. And this weekend, the overwhelming favorite to go number one turned some heads by saying, quote, "I just want to go somewhere where I can win." Nick, of everything that you've heard from Joe Burrow over the course of the last couple of weeks, you think Burrow wants to play for the Cincinnati Bengals?
No, and I don't blame him at all. I want to take a step back here for a moment. Listen, the draft is a somewhat absurd construct we've all just accepted. For all three of our major sports, the highest of high achievers at the amateur level get somewhat randomly assigned to a city they have no choice in for the next 7 years of their life, and they're just all supposed to like it and love it. So that's not realistic. But the draft is the system that we have, and the fans seem to like it, so it's going to stay in place. But Joe Burrow has done everything aside from create a homemade sign that says, "Please, someone trade up for me," and we got to take him at his word or at his lack of words. This all started back in January when he told our friend Dan Patrick, "You want to go number one, but you also want to go to a great organization that is committed to winning." It's kind of like saying, "I kind of want Chinese, but I also want Italian." You got to pick one of the two. He knew Cincinnati had the number one pick then. He also then in February said, "Whoever wants to pay me to play football, I'll play for them." He also hired Jordan Palmer to train him the day after Carson Palmer said, "I would never want to go to the Bengals if I were Joe Burrow." Carson Palmer, of course, who was the number one overall pick, who went to the Bengals, which takes us to this quote from Shaq's podcast, where once again, he has ample opportunity to say, "I'm from Ohio. They have the number one pick. It's perfect." And instead, he hedges it. "I want to get drafted to a good team, good organization that's maximizing my talent. I've won everywhere I've been. I've never had a losing season. I'm not a loser. I just want to go somewhere I can win." Wilds, I don't think Joe Burrow is threatening not to play. In fact, he's made it very clear he's not going to threaten not to play. But at no point has Joe Burrow said, I think I'm the best player. My hometown team's got the number one pick. Sounds perfect to me. Excited to be a Bengal. I'd be disappointed if I'm not. I don't think I'm reading between the lines. I think I'm reading the lines that Burrow hopes someone trades up so he doesn't have to be a Bengal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Nick. I feel like he could come right out and say it. And I'm not 100% sure why he's not. Maybe he's just hedging his bet a little bit. The other quote that I loved is where he just said, like, "I'm not a loser." He was like on his DJ Khaled, like, "All I do is win." And we had our researcher, Dusty, look it up. He said the last time Joe Burrow lost a game was November 24th, 2018 at Texas A&M. The guy is on a killer winning streak here. And I wonder, the subplot that I took from this podcast is how he's going to deal with all the losing that's coming Cincinnati's way. So, and I have a story about parenting and kids in general. When you have kids, you know that there's some big days coming up for you. You know, you got birthdays and graduations and their wedding. I've got a new day, and it's a day that everyone remembers. I'm calling it Ivan Drago Day. Ivan Drago Day is the day where you look at your kid and they're on a huge winning streak. Like, my kid's been winning basketball. He's got a 200-game winning streak going. And you just look at them on today's Ivan Drago Day, you say, "I must break you. Today is the day you have to learn to lose." And you make one more shot, and the kid's like, "What? What just happened?" It's like, yes, this is the real world. That's the world that Joe Burrow is going into. if we could put up the Bengals schedule, the Fox bet over-under, I think it's 5.5. Nick, they could go over here. There's not like obvious games. Let's assume they lose all their away games. You think the Browns are going to lose? Maybe Jacksonville thinks they're going to lose? No other team thinks they're going to lose. 0-16 is on the board for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. So I think losing is underrated. And I think Joe Burrow is in for a sort of a rough ride in Cincinnati, Jenna.
Greg, jump in here. What do you think Joe Burrow really wants?
He said it. He wants to win. He wants to go to an organization that has proven that they can win, that they will utilize his abilities and his talents to the best. And if I'm a player and I'm potentially going to be the #1 overall draft pick, I could say all these things too. However, you have to understand it is out of your control, and he knows that. And I think the one thing that Joe Burrows is really trying to do and convey is to any team that potentially wants and needs a quarterback, trade up for that #1 pick.
Wow.
The Miami Dolphins,
Yes.
if they don't feel like Tua's their guy, like the Jaguars, like the Lions, teams like that who are right there, but they can trade up. That's all he's really trying to do, and I think he's doing a great job. However, I would caution him because it is Cleveland, because it is Ohio, and you look at what LeBron James did with Cleveland being the #1 overall draft pick out of high school to the Cleveland Cavaliers, a franchise who hadn't won in however many years, and look what he was able to do, but he embraced that role. If he was willing to embrace it, he would be endeared forever in the state of Ohio and in the city of Cincinnati. I don't think he really cares about that, but we will see.
Nick, if the Bengals feel the way Greg said Joe Burrow probably feels, like, hey, message to all the other teams, if you need a quarterback, feel free to trade up. Should the Bengals even care? Should they care about what Joe Burrow wants?
No. I mean, unfortunately for Joe, like Greg mentioned, he has no say in it, and no, they shouldn't care. And because of the way it works in the NFL, you draft a guy in the first round, you have him for 5 years, you can franchise him 2 more years after that, so it's 7 years until he would have freedom of movement. But I want to circle back to Greg's point about LeBron, because I want to make this clear. I'm not attacking Joe Burrow here. I know that I said I'd take Tua #1. I got to know Joe a little bit. I think he's a super sharp kid, and I think he's going to be a good player. I like him a lot. I don't think it's a negative he doesn't want to go to Cincinnati, but I think it's pretty obvious he doesn't want to go to Cincinnati. I'm going to read you one more quote. The quote is this: "I'm staying in Ohio, and I'm real excited. I'm not going to guarantee a championship, but I will guarantee we'll get better every day. We're going to be a lot better than last year." End quote. That was LeBron James the day the Cavs won the draft lottery. Not when they drafted him. The day they won the draft lottery, he's like, boom, staying in Ohio. I already know it. I'm the #1 pick. You know it. I know it. Hey, we have heard nothing close to that, Wilds, from Joe Burrow, and I don't think it's reaching to say it's because he does want to entice another team to trade up and come get him.
Then why doesn't he just say it, Nick? Why doesn't, it's the fence sitting. You want him to just either go one way or the other. Do you think this is actually getting the message, or behind the scenes, is that the message that you think is going out?
Well, I'll kick this to you, Greg. I think the reason he doesn't just say it is you say it and you get labeled. Then he's a diva. He's a caricature. He walks into the league with all this baggage. So, Greg, I think he's saying it without saying it. And I don't know what you think, but giving himself some plausible deniability here, Greg.
100% agreed, Nick. This is the perfect instance where you don't say what you really want, because you have to potentially go in that locker room with a bunch of guys that you're going to have to create relationships with, and then convince that I can lead you to win, to turn this organization around. You don't go into a situation where you've pretty much burned every bridge and you've knocked over everything in the cupboards. Like, that is not how he wants to approach it. I think it's smart. He and everyone knows how he really feels.
All right, well, important to note, the NFL virtual draft now just 10 days away. This will all sort itself out on April 23rd. We got to take a break. Coming up, is Tampa Brady about to reunite Gronk in Tampa Bay?
Oh, my God.
That will make a lot more sense next on